record this one. We got a couple AI bots doing our dirty work for us. We don't have to take notes anymore because the AI bots do it for us. Let- Turn off the nice chill lo-fi hip hop. Well,
The elevator music.
yeah. So we had a vote, and we got people that are interested in the 5:30 call. So we're going to be talking about the who's who in real estate investing. So we got a good group live with us on Zoom. We will be reposting this to Facebook and of course YouTube. So go back and watch these. Our goal is to empower and to teach and to educate so that we can all do really good deals and make some money and help each other grow and get good at what we do. So, my name's Austin from Houston. I'm joined by my guest co-host Alberto Medellin. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. Still feeling fresh, even though it's the end of the day. I've got some
Yeah,
ribs in the Instant Pot, so that's dinner for tonight after all this is done.
I'm jealous. Well, I don't get to eat anything fun. After what I ate this weekend, I'm going to eat just some chicken and vegetables today. So,
Good.
so
I had a light lunch, and so I'll have ribs with some mac and cheese. So
that
yeah,
sounds good. That sounds good.
and some barbecue beans. So yeah, it's gonna be
So,
good.
for those of you who don't know, Albert and I, we've been friends for a long time. We've done business in some different ways. But Albert, tell us a little bit about your background as a real estate investor, because you've managed to generate an impressive level of success in a very short amount of time. So, tell us how you got started and what triggered so much momentum in your career.
Yeah, so we got started just about a little bit less than 5 years ago. So it was about the beginning of COVID when that was happening. At the time, I was working in IT, and I'd been in IT for about 25 years at that time. And I don't know if you guys remember all this uncertainty when people were kind of losing their jobs, things were shutting down. And I wasn't necessarily afraid of losing my job, but there was just so much uncertainty. So I talked to my wife and said, I think we need another stream of income here. And a buddy of mine was flipping houses, and so I reached out to him and started thinking about real estate. And honestly, in the beginning, what gave us a lot of momentum was I hired a coach, mentor, and I think we're going to talk about coaches here as someone that's part of this ecosystem. But I hired a coach and mentor in the beginning of this, and it really kind of fast tracked us. We
Right.
did a whole bunch of flips. We own 10 rentals right now. We own Airbnbs, we own long-term rentals. I'm still with that coach. I'm actually an accountability coach in that program now.
Nice.
Yeah, and we've also opened up a co-working collaboration space in Houston for real estate professionals, people like agents, architects, designers, and real estate investors who are aspiring to invest, but maybe they're still working their 9 to 5 job remote. We
Hmm.
have a co-working space for them to meet up in Houston, so that's pretty new. But yeah, done about 25 deals since then and done everything, flipping, wholesaling, buying whole rentals. We've used hard money, which you guys talked about last week. We've done DSCR loans. We're going to talk about all this stuff as we get through. I've done a little bit of everything except for commercial. So
Yeah.
commercial, I know Austin, you have a lot of good experience on the commercial side. So that's really the only thing that we haven't really dabbled into. And we have two ground
Not
up
yet.
construction jobs starting.
Yeah, I may need you to dabble. We may get you to
Yeah,
dabble this year.
I'm ready
So
to dabble.
one of the reasons I thought that it would be perfect for us to co-host together, because you have dealt with a lot of different players, a lot of different characters in the REI ecosystem, and we have a lot of people in our calls, in our circles, come to happy hours. By the way, everybody on this call, you are invited. I forgot to invite the 12:30 call, but you are invited to our happy hour at Chelsea Wine Bar. It's this Thursday, 4 to 7. Great place to meet other investors, great place to talk about real estate and business and just to meet like-minded people. So you need some good friends. We're here for you. But the what we wanted to talk about today are the different roles in the REI ecosystem because some people on these calls have more money than they have time, and some people have more time than they have money, and there's a place for everyone, right? So go ahead and get started because you mentioned a couple of different things. You mentioned lenders, you mentioned mentors, mentioned agents. So we're gonna go through the list. So you don't have to take notes. We'll email these notes to you, but if you are taking notes, then do take good notes. So first character in the story, we want to introduce the wholesaler. So a lot different people have different opinions and perspectives about wholesalers. Some think they're kind of sleazy or misleading, and some have actually made a lot of money working with wholesalers. Uh, what is a wholesaler and what is the role they play in the REI universe?
Yeah, I think really wholesalers, what they do is they do a lot of off-market marketing, right? They'll drive for dollars, they'll door knock, cold call, send postcards, and they're really looking for those off-market leads, those people that want to sell or maybe they're thinking about selling, and they get kind of belly to belly with these people in their kitchens,
Hmm.
and they're trying to strike up a deal, and getting that property under contract for a certain amount of money. And then what that wholesaler does is they market that contract to their list of buyers or maybe other wholesalers or agents.
Right.
And they're going to mark it up with their assignment fee. So for instance, they get a house under contract for 100,000 and they go shop it around for 110,000 to find an investor who's willing to pay that amount. They find an investor that does that. Investor pays 110, the seller gets their 100 and the wholesaler gets their 10,000 in between.
Right.
So they're really
Right.
just kind of like a middleman in between. And I mean, like you mentioned before, there's they are some pretty sleazy wholesalers, but there are some wholesalers that are doing things the right way, with
Yeah.
integrity and ethics. So yeah, we can kind of delve into that too, of these good and bad
I
of those things.
I have I'm good friends with a couple of wholesalers that I've known for quite some time, and you can find good deals. Some of them are priced too high.
Hmm.
Some of them are really kind of iffy. Some of them can be misleading. I had
Hmm.
a property under contract a couple years ago, and I didn't realize they didn't disclose to me that that wholesaler that sold me the contract actually bought it from another wholesaler. So I
Hmm.
was two wholesalers away from the original seller. So there was a lot of high pressure negotiation that went through to get that deal going. So so basically, wholesalers are finding these really good deals. They don't represent the seller. They don't represent the buyer. They're basically representing themselves or representing the firm. They put a
Right.
house under contract. And by the way, you can wholesale without having any money. So they're not putting any money into the deal. So their risk is very, very low in this
Hmm.
deal,
Right.
um, even lower than probably real estate agents in some ways. And then they have a certain period of time they're basically selling the contract.
Right.
Now, some wholesalers will actually wholesale where they actually buy the property and then sell it, but most of the time when we run into wholesalers, they don't actually own that house, right?
Yeah, right. So like we tell all of our students or what we train them is really dealing with wholesalers, even agents,
Hmm.
or directly with buyers is you're going to get a set of information and you can trust that information, but you have to verify it. Run your own comps, walk the property with your contractors, get your own bids because that wholesaler is
Yeah,
giving you some marketing and they want to present the best, foot forward on this deal. So you definitely want to run your own numbers and do your own due diligence because that wholesaler, they like you mentioned before, they have no fiduciary obligation
yeah,
to either end of that transaction. They're just in the middle. So, know your numbers, right?
yeah. So I was talking to somebody who was very, very early in the real estate game, and one thing I told him If you want to get started, one of the first things you need to do, well, I asked him this question. How often are you looking at deals? How often are you going through deals? And he said, well, I haven't really started doing that yet. I'm like, well, if you want to get into real estate investing, get on some wholesale lists, find some
Mhm.
wholesalers that we can recommend some if you want to, if you need a recommendation, and then just start going through the deals they're sending and start trying to just evaluate them.
Mhm.
And you can learn a lot just by committing, 15 to 30 minutes a day to that process.
Right.
Number
I mean,
two on the list, go ahead, go
yeah,
ahead.
I use sports analogies a lot,
Yeah.
and it's like, I mean, and some people might not get this, but you're trying to get better at basketball, right? You're not going to get better at basketball by watching a bunch of basketball videos and reading books and listening to podcasts. You have to get out
Hmm.
there and start shooting your shot, right?
Right.
You have to spend 15, 30 minutes, an hour a day shooting free throws if you want to get good at free throws or shooting three
Yeah.
pointers, right? Same thing. These wholesalers, when you get on their list, they may be sending you things that you're not really interested in, but I
Yeah.
would still do the rep, right? Do the underwriting and just put your reps in so you can get better at running comps, estimating repairs, and things like that. And then really focus on your market where you want to invest and learn that market. I mean, that's another thing that we teach our
Yeah.
people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cool.
Number two, we got agents, real estate agents.
Agents,
So,
yeah, some are good and some are not so good. Just
yeah.
kind of like just kind of like wholesalers. You're awesome though, Austin. And those agents that communicate well with not only like their seller or their buyer, whichever end of the transaction they're representing, but I mean, especially like last year when, it was kind of a bloodbath, I think, for a lot of people. The
Hmm.
last couple of years has been kind of tough. And, we're reaching out to agents because we buy a lot of properties off the MLS, investment properties. And we're reaching out to agents. And I mean, sometimes it's so difficult to get them to pick up the phone, to respond to a text, respond to an email. And it's unfortunate because they're kind of doing a disservice, to
Yeah.
their client, right? On the other end of the spectrum, you have agents that do very well driving that bus.
Hmm.
They're managing that transaction, they're communicating on both ends of that transaction, talking to title company, talking to the surveyor, talking to the appraiser, or at least getting all these people
Right.
talking on one thread and paying close attention to due dates, right? Or
Yeah.
requests for information and things like that. So those agents who are very detail oriented, those are really good agents, and they're going to make sure that their client's going to close on those transactions. So
And
that's
those are
kind
the
of
agents, yeah, that survive these kind of market shifts. I think NAR released a stat: 72% of licensed agents in the United States sold zero properties
yep.
last year. So, yeah, you may want to pick an agent that sold more than one house last year. That might be a good place to start and then narrow it down from there. So, characteristics of a good agent, you mentioned communication is key. Another thing is understanding the process thoroughly and being able to coordinate between all the players. Because whether it be residential or commercial, when you are selling and buying, there are a ton of moving parts. And for a buyer, you can't be expected to know everything about the appraisal process or understand what's important in the inspection, and there's a million things like that. What's on the title report? But your agent knows how to coordinate that. Your agent's staying ahead of that. But also in real estate investing, another thing that a lot of agents can get away with non-investors is weak negotiating. If you're
Mhm.
if you're working with an agent in the investing side of things, your agent has got to negotiate well. They've got to know the art of negotiating and know how to, and it's not always what you see on TV, but we can talk about that another time. But anything else as far as agents go, they play a critical role. Now, you don't need an agent always, do you?
No, you don't need an agent. I mean, we contact listing agents directly a lot. If I feel like, because my wife's an agent, she's a part-time agent, she just does it on the side. If I feel like she could help in the negotiation process because she's very good at that, then
Hmm.
I'll ask her, to make that phone call sometime. But she's pretty busy too with her job. She's got a full-time job, so she's just too busy. I'm reaching out to agents directly, and just trying to get them on the phone. So you don't necessarily need an agent. In these days, though, it can help. Yeah,
Yeah, it can make a difference.
yeah, it can make a
Another
difference.
thing that agents can provide is access to inventory, data. A lot of good agents are going to know off-market properties. Our
Hmm.
team, we keep a pretty extensive pocket list of off-market properties that we only share with our clients. So, number three on the list, buy and hold investors.
Yeah, yeah. So many. So I mean, really, a lot of people think we're going to talk about flippers here next, but when people think of flipping houses, kind of like HGTV, right, or
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
whatever shows on HGTV these days, and they just think like, yeah, it's just going to be easy. I'm going to go in, my contractor's going to do what I tell them to do. It's going to be on budget and on time, and they're going to make money doing that, hopefully. But the way to build real wealth is by holding on to that real
Yeah,
estate, because there's
100%.
there's so many different ways to get paid. When you're a flipper or you're a wholesaler, you just get paid once,
Hmm.
and you have to constantly do that or you stop getting paid. With
Right.
buy and hold real estate, whether that's a single family home or multifamily or even commercial, right? You've kind of got this mailbox money coming in every month, and you want to underwrite the deal appropriately. You want to make sure you can get some cash flow out of
Yeah.
that, but that's not the only thing that pays you, right? Is you've got debt pay down. So your
Hmm.
renters, your tenants,
Yeah.
Airbnb, whatever, they're paying that mortgage for you, right? So that mortgage is going down. Over time, that property appreciates. So that gap increases, that equity
Right.
gap increases. So you're building equity in the property that you can then tap into
Yeah.
sometime in the future if you need to, right? Or sell it and trade up or do
What do
something
you mean
like
by
that.
tap into? When you say tap
So
into a property, how do you tap into a property?
right. So, these days it's hard to get a line of credit on an investment property. But if you have several investment properties with a lot of equity, you can take that package to a bank and just refinance that package and
Yeah.
then pull some of that equity out if you
Yeah.
want to, while you're still holding on to the real estate,
If you
right?
have an asset with equity, the bank can use that as collateral for
Is
funding your next
exactly,
deal.
exactly. In creative ways, right? And then you've got the tax incentives. The federal government, the tax laws favor people that invest in real estate. So there's a bunch of tax rules that you can leverage to your advantage to bypass or delay taxes down the road, right? And you
Right.
only can do that when you're holding on to this real estate. So that to me is game changer, because like I mentioned, my wife has a full-time job and we can leverage our rental properties to offset some of those income taxes that we pay for her. So
So buying and holding, I think you and I both agree, that's the absolute best way in real estate to build massive wealth, but it's a slow cooker. It takes time. You got to
mhm,
pay down the mortgage.
mhm,
It's going to appraise slowly. It doesn't appraise every year, but on average, it's going to appraise around 5% per year.
mhm.
Um, uh, but then there's some people they want to get going fast and make some quick cash. Flipping is probably better for the quick cash aspect.
Yes, definitely. Flipping, done right, with the right team. I mean, we're going to talk about that a lot, is building the right team, having the right mentors and people around you. So flipping, yes, our very first project was a flip property in Galveston. And I
Hmm.
mean, we had cash to get started. We didn't necessarily need a big chunk of cash to get started. We had some cash to get started, but our first deal was a flip in Galveston, and this was in like 2020, 2021. The market was just like on fire back then. I think
Hmm.
I mean, we did a really bang up job on that renovation. Austin, you came out and made a bid to market that property. I remember that. And you showed up
I
with your
said,
sign and contracts and everything, and I was like,
I was
whoa, whoa, slow
I'm
down
a
there, buddy.
I'm a closer, Albert. You know this.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. But anyways, back then, as a flipper, you could just do a mediocre job and still make a lot of money,
Yeah.
And then the market changed, right? The market
Hmm.
changed over the past couple of years, where you really had to underwrite properly. You had to do a really good job, and specific price points were now a big deal. But we do that now. We still flip houses. We don't like to do it as often just because the market is pretty tough and you're just kind of at the mercy of the market or what someone's willing to pay for your property. I mean, you told me this, Austin. You asked me, like, how much is your house worth? And I was like, oh, what it appraised for, blah, blah, blah. You said, no, your house is worth what someone is willing to pay for it,
Yeah.
right? What they're
At,
willing to buy it for.
yeah. A
So,
lot of times people will say, "Hey, well, my house appraised for $500, $500,000." I'm like, "Who appraised it?" And they'll
yeah.
be like, "The government." And then my response is going to be, well, is the government going to buy your house?
Right.
No. Well,
Yeah.
no. Why, what is the incentive for the county to appraise a house high? That's how they make their money.
Drive up those taxes. Yeah.
They get
Yeah.
those taxes up. So
Yeah.
with that note, if you need help protesting your taxes, I can run the numbers, I can run the reports, I can show you how to do that. So we have holders and flippers, and then sometimes we have a combination of two. I wanted to mention this. Maybe you want to event, ultimately hold onto a property, but the property's in disarray. So you could do a combination where you buy the house using hard money, you rehab the house, get it up, and then you refinance it with a conventional loan, or and then hold it as a renter. And
Right.
that's what leads us into the next category are lenders. So we have a lot of
Yeah.
different types of lenders that in there's different types of lenders that we need to talk about. So where do you want to start with lending?
Well, I mean, we talked about it. We don't have to rehash too much, but you guys talked about it last week, and that was kind of how we did our first 10 or 11 deals was we used hard money, right? And just a quick recap. So hard money, at least from our perspective, is short-term loans. Typically, you've got points that you pay up front that don't apply to your loan. That's just a fee that you're going to pay your lender. Uh, Usually at a higher interest rate for anywhere from 6 to 12 months is kind of the term. With that higher interest rate, it should motivate you to get in and out of that property, right?
Hmm.
Is renovate it and either rent it out and refinance it or sell it and flip
Get it
it.
on the market and sell it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't because you're going to be paying interest only payments on those loans. And then the good thing about hard money that you may not be able to get with a conventional loan initially is hard money is going to lend you money to buy the property and renovate it, right?
Right.
Regardless of the condition. Conventional loans, if you're trying to buy an investment property, they kind of want it to be almost livable,
Yeah.
right? Before
That's
you'll get a
important.
conventional loan.
Your
Yeah,
conventional financing, they're not going to lend on a house that needs $80,000 worth of work.
yeah,
That's where the hard
exactly.
money comes in.
Exactly. So those are short-term loans. And then what we did with our rentals was we then refinanced those into commercial loans or DSCR loans.
Hmm.
And we talked about that. So debt service coverage ratio. So that's what we use where the lender looks at what your market rents are for the property. So let's say you can get $1,000 for the
Hmm.
rent and they look at the estimated mortgage payment, right? So if your mortgage payment is like $1,000, then you've got a 1.0 ratio there.
Right.
Sometimes, at least these days, with lending, at how tight it's gotten, they kind of want 1.1 or 1.2. You were mentioning like 1.25.
Yeah.
So they want to see your rent at 1250, right? To
Those
cover
lenders, those lenders are more concerned with how that asset is performing as opposed
exactly.
to
Yeah,
your credit and your income. They're looking at the
100%.
performance of the asset more than
Yeah,
the actual
100%. So
borrower.
those loans, those DSCR loans, they're sometimes called low doc loans. So you don't
Hmm.
have to send them W-2s and income tax returns. Honestly, you don't even have to have a job. They're looking at how that rental property is going to perform, as opposed to a conventional loan where, you're going to have a lot more documentation there.
And
But
conventional financing can still be a good long-term option in some
100%.
ways.
Yes, yeah,
You
100%. 'Cause
you
yeah.
just don't get all the tax breaks, and sometimes the interest is going to be a little bit higher for a second property as opposed to your homestead.
Yeah, it will. And you brought up a good point, Austin. If you're going to refinance into a conventional loan versus a DSCR loan, that DSCR loan is also going to be a higher interest rate than that conventional loan. And those interest rates are higher. Your insurance is going to be a little bit higher, mainly because it's an investment property and you're not living in it. And the
Right.
bank and your insurance companies, they look at your homestead as this is your property. You're going to protect it. You're going to do everything you
Yeah.
can to protect that property as opposed to a renter who might
Right.
be in that property. So it's a little bit riskier for everybody involved.
So huge point to that is that your number one real estate investment, and this is for everybody. If somebody comes to me and they say that I want to invest in real estate, and I ask them, do you own a home? And if they say no, my response is, why don't you own the house that you live in? Like, let's start with that. Like, I don't know if you agree with me on that. You may have a different perspective, but I feel like your number one real estate investment is the house you live in.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I think it's just really depending on the specific market that you might be in,
Hmm.
where renting might be a little bit less expensive. I hear what you're saying though, because you can build the equity and all those other things that we just talked about on a property. But if it's a difference of maybe you getting in the game and getting a rental property, getting an investment property, and you can live for a small amount of rent somewhere else, maybe that might make sense. Typically though, I agree with you about 90% of the time.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take 90%. By the
Yeah.
way, if you're on the call, you have a question, you can unmute yourself, or you can leave a question in the chat box. Who are some of the
Yeah.
players? Who are some of the characters in the game of real estate investing? We're not
Yeah.
done with lending though.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So as we evolved, our real estate journey made progress. We kind of switched from hard money loans and we networked with people. We built a reputation, online and with our circle of influence.
Uh,
And we started to use private money lenders.
Private
So
money.
these are private individuals. They're not professional lenders. So you're going to bypass a lot of these points and these fees and things like that. And as you perform on those loans, you might even get a little bit more creative with them, a little bit more flexibility with them. But we've been using private money. Austin, you've been on a deal with us or two, and so that's been very, very lucrative for us and our lenders that are involved. And
Right.
so that to me is a little bit more advanced, especially I know we're talking about REI 101. That's a little bit more advanced in the sense that that private lender isn't going to underwrite the deal with you like your hard money lender would typically underwrite the
Yeah.
deal with you. So
Yeah.
you really kind of have to know what you're doing when you're using other people's money in that respect. So you don't want to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. And I found that out of all the different roles that you can play in the real estate world, this is probably one of the quietest. So I was talking earlier about mailbox money. I mean, I don't really believe that there's 100% passive income, but this is pretty close. This is probably
Hmm.
the closest out of everything that we're talking about. This is the quietest because you don't have to really get out of bed. All you have to do is check your email and make sure that that check comes through the first of every month, and then not even worry about it. So
Yeah, you get
that's
that
one of the
ACH
benefits.
that ACH deposit hits.
That
Yeah.
ACH deposit, yeah, just like
Yeah.
clockwork.
And then we kind of talked about creative finance,
Creative
right?
financing or
And
seller financing.
seller finance. What did you say about that?
So we're seeing a lot of that on the commercial side, some of it on the residential side, but because, like you said, like these DSCR loans used to be like a 1.1, 1.2, and now we're seeing more 1.25. What that means is that the lender's requiring the net profit of that asset to be 25% higher than the income, which kills like 95% of the deals. It makes it impossible. So there's, multifamily RV parks, hotels are just like not even worth trying in a lot of cases. So if if the income can't cover that debt service,
Hmm.
sometimes you can get creative with the seller, and the seller can finance part of it for short, short, maybe 2 years or a couple of years, just so you can get the
That
asset to
ratio.
perform and get it to where banks would be more interested in lending on that. You can
Yeah.
also do a combination of all of these as
Hmm.
well. We have a couple of syndication. Well, let's go to syndications and then we'll talk about combos after that.
Yeah.
So GPs versus LPs. We
Yeah.
talked
Tell
a
me
little
about
bit
it.
about that. Okay,
Yeah. Tell me about it.
so these are syndication. These are fundraisers. This is something that I'm getting into. So GP is a general partner. So basically, here's the scenario. We got some people on the call that I can pick on. So let's say that I find this great deal, and I normally one of the first people I'll go to is Richard, and I'll be like, I got this great deal. It has a eternal rate of return of 30% or 35% over the course of 2 years. And we take that deal And instead of me financing it through a bank, maybe the deal's so big, it's millions of dollars. So we need to raise $2 million. So we're gonna go to Albert, we'll go to Jamie, we'll go to Clarissa. We'll start going to different people and saying, hey, we got this deal. We need to raise $2 million. And then all of you, Albert, you're going to be a an LP. I'm going to be the GP. You be the LP. Jamie's the LP. Richard's the LP. You're the limited partners. So you're going to give me, or not me, but you're going to contribute a certain amount of money into a pool, into a fund. And once we get to the 2 million mark, once we hit our goal, our fundraising goal, then we can proceed with that project. All the LPs in the project are going to get a return on their investment proportional to the amount that they contributed to that fund. So that's basically it. Since I'm the GP, I'm doing more of the work, I'm analyzing the deal, I'm educating, I'm paying for the marketing, yada, yada, yada. I mean, this has become a job for me. So the GPs will often get paid with like maybe an equity share or a larger share based on their work. LPs don't have to do anything except for just front the money.
Mhm.
So
Cool.
that's for syndication. That's fundraising. That's the difference between a GP and an LP. And then the next thing I was going to mention is you can combo these together. So you can do a syndication, a fundraise, and have part of it financed by the bank, or
Right.
have part of it financed by the bank and have the seller. Sometimes the seller can finance. Maybe the seller can finance the down payment, and which, by the way, that's another way that you can get into a deal without having a lot of money.
Hmm.
If you don't have a lot of money, you're trying to get into a deal, maybe you could finance part of it and then have the seller finance part of it. Maybe you want to flip a house. You can start taking these different elements and start getting creative with it. So maybe you found a house, you want to flip it. The seller will, charge you interest only payments for a certain amount of time. And then once you sell the house, you can, paying the balance off. There's endless ways. Once you have a good idea of how these different financing techniques work, then you can start getting really creative in combining different types of financing. You can have hard money on a house that you live in. So there's different ways to do it.
Yeah. And you're gonna learn along the way.
So that's money, and we will talk about in another episode in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about how to find money and where money comes from, and so we'll go more into that. But all these people play a critical role. Um, One thing we didn't mention is you could just buy cash, but
Yeah.
what fun is that, right? So
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna run out pretty quick though. I mean, unless you
yeah,
got like deep pockets like some of our friends, but still, you utilize leverage that increases or improves your return on your investment, when you're using leverage the right way.
yeah, absolutely. Next, we have contractors. This
Yeah.
this this can ruin your life if you make a bad move here, right?
Yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I've experienced I think all of them. Actually, I've experienced all of them on one project. Good, bad, and ugly. So, I mean, you can laugh at it now. I mean, and again, you got to develop this mindset that you're going to experience problems. You're going to experience problems with people, with money, with time, all of these things. And as a real estate investor, you have to be a problem solver, and
Right.
you have to develop this mindset that I am going to keep going. I'm going to be successful at this no matter what.
Yeah.
Every deal that we've done, except for maybe one or two, have all made money. Some of them been very profitable, some of them a little profitable. We've lost a little bit of money on one or two, and but you move
Yeah.
on, right? And you fix it. And contractors can make or break your deal. When you're dealing with a contractor you've never worked with before, do your personalities match up? We tell people, we teach our students. Well, number one, we provide a dream team of contractors to our students. But if you're out there on the own trying to figure this out on your own, wholesalers, everybody we've said so far, you want to vet these people, right?
Hmm.
You want to get references on these people. You want to talk to your friends. Hey, who have you used, right? And understand too that that person they're going to recommend somebody to you doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do the same job or the same
Right.
level of service for you, right? I always
Absolutely.
look at it that way because I can't hold my friends accountable for this contractor who maybe didn't do such a great job for me, right? It's
Yeah.
on me. But yeah, so and you're gonna
So
have
what are some of the
contractors.
good, what are some of the positive qualities? Like what are some of the must-haves in a contractor?
Well, communication. I think communication is paramount. You know, if your contractor isn't telling you when there's a delay or something's coming up and you're showing up on site and there's nobody there for the last couple days and you're calling this guy, "Hey, what's going on?" It's like, "Oh, so and so got sick," or we've had a GC tell me that their blow-in insulation guy got hit by a car. So, I mean, we've heard every
Wow.
reason why somebody's not on site. I mean, he was fine. He actually showed up later that night with a limp, but sometimes you think you've heard it all, but anything can happen to people. So be prepared for that.
Are
But
contractors, I love it when contractors show up to the job and they forgot their tools. Has that
yeah,
ever happened to you?
or their tools get usually their tools. If somebody doesn't have tools, they got stolen.
Yeah.
So we had somebody's ex-wife take his truck and basically confiscate his truck, and so
Oh
he
yeah.
yeah. So that was another thing. But communication is key, right? Honesty, integrity, right? You don't want your contractor stealing money from you, and just whatever amount of what is it that or what is it gosh the word is not value, but you're going to pay for a level of service, right?
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and and, and it's either going to be fast, it's going to be good, or it's going to be cheap, right? You can't
Right.
have all of those at once. So gosh, I guess his word is just like escaping my mind. You want to make sure they're doing a good job, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to vet them, but
You
now
got
you've
to
got the other
inspect
end.
what you expect.
Yeah, you've got the other end of contractors, right, that don't show up, right? Or they're not communicating with you, or they're just giving you high level numbers and they're not really itemizing things down for you, so you don't know
Yeah.
necessarily what you're getting, what you're paying for, you know?
That's critical. Like if I have a contractor come out to a project, and by the way, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've only used one single guy, and he's
Hmm.
he's pretty loyal to us, and so I trust him. We've built a lot of trust with each other. But before that, um, we've had contractors come out and we'll ask them, okay, so how much is this going to cost? And they're going to say $45,000, and I'm going to say, how? How do you come up with $45,000? She goes, well, you need counters and floors and all this stuff. I'm like, but if you can't break it down so I can add it up, I don't, you can't, don't go with the lowest bid, first of
Right.
all, because they may not even know how they came up with that number.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to explain like everything on the list, how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take.
Yeah. The importance of getting that itemized bid once you get to that stage, you're not going to get that first off. Like we never get that first off whenever we're getting bids. We're just like give us some high level numbers. And then that helps me do my underwriting. If we get under contract and we get out of option, now
Hmm.
I'm looking for an itemized bid. And what we teach our students, and I've learned this over time, Austin, is I'm usually walking that property 2 or 3 times with the contractor that we're going to use. Once to get the high level, right? And then a second time at least after he's given me his itemized bid. Like, hey, let's
Right.
meet back over there. Let's go over your bid. And I've got a statement of work, a detailed scope of work or statement of work that I've shared with him to make sure those numbers, what we're asking for, and what he understands he's going to provide, make sure
Yeah.
those things match up. Right? Super important. And when you have that itemized bid, like you were saying before, then you know how much things cost or an idea of how much things cost. So when there's a change order that comes up, you're like, hey, I'm already paying 10 grand for this AC unit. Why are you charging me another 2,000? Right? If
Right.
you didn't have that itemized bid, they could charge you whatever.
Right.
They can make these change orders for whatever. So that's why you want to have that itemized bid too.
Do you use subs? Why don't you tell everybody what the difference is between a GC and a sub?
So a general contractor is almost like a project manager. So he's going to come in and he's going to bring all of these. He's got his whole network of people. He's going to bring in his subs. So that'll be like your sheetrock guy, framer, electrician, plumber, foundation, roof, all of these things, all of these people he's going to bring in. Your general contractor kind of manages this whole ecosystem of contractors and subs. All right.
Right.
And then he'll have, handyman and stuff like that kind of towards the end or do some smaller things for you. Your subs, how I understand it, is you no longer have this general contractor like managing this project for you and you're managing it, right?
Right.
You're managing the subcontractors. And those
Right. The
subcontractors
the
are
electrician, you have to get
everyone
your
that
own
I just
roofer,
named
you have to
off
get your
right
own
now.
plumber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're managing all that. And if you're a full-time real estate investor, maybe you got the time for all that. And that's great. We do a little bit of that on some of our projects. On some of our bigger projects, we'll have a general contractor come in.
So two things about subs versus general contractors that are worth mentioning. You can save money by subbing everything out, by
Mhm.
hiring your own electrician, your own plumber, your own roofer, your own foundation guy. The list can be endless. You
Yeah,
can save money. Now, number one, it's going to be a lot more work, but you can
sure.
save money. Number two, there's a major risk when you're going the sub route that you're going to miss something because you may end up hiring five or six, seven, eight subs, but forget to have an HVAC tech come check the HVAC, and that happened to me. What happened to me with the GC, and here's another thing that you got to remember this about general contractors: they don't always do everything. There's
Oh
some
yeah,
general contractors for some reason
yeah,
won't touch granite. I had a general contractor; he wouldn't touch granite. I had a general contractor. I didn't notice this until we were halfway through the project. There was no quote on replacing the AC. I'm like, I thought we talked about the AC need to be replaced. And he literally said, I don't do ACs. I'm like, but
yeah,
you're the G. So don't expect that the GC is going to automatically do everything. You need to have a checklist. Uh,
yeah,
hold on one second. Somebody's trying to call me for the love. Why would someone do that? So make sure you have your own checklists and make sure that they have a realistic timeline to go with it and that you hold it to them. We're
yeah.
almost go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, like you're talking about timeline is there's also a specific order that things have to be done. Like you're not gonna start flooring and doing things inside the house and you still haven't fixed the foundation,
Right.
right? So like there's a specific order, and those are things too that we train our students as well as what order to follow as well.
Couple of last things I'll hit. There's property managers. So once you have tenants in a property, whether it be commercial or residential, they can manage the property for you. That's actually obviously going to be more expensive, but give you a lot of your time back. There's something called an asset manager. This may be an interesting way to get into real estate investing without having money because there are some real estate investors that just have more real estate than they can actually think of, and they need somebody to help them manage their portfolio and work with the agents and the wholesalers. And so
Hmm.
I actually have a couple of clients that are asset managers, and they get paid like part salary, part equity kind of deal. CPAs, we talked about that.
Yeah.
You love your CPA. I
Yeah,
hate
and I love
mine.
our CPA. Like we talked about, what we're CPAs, legal teams, attorneys, and title professionals. Once you like, if you've done a deal or two, maybe you don't necessarily need a CPA at that point, but as you start to accumulate rental properties and know having someone that is very familiar with tax codes and how
Hmm.
you, like I mentioned earlier, how you leverage those tax codes to either delay or reduce your tax liability on your
Yeah,
properties. Um, Having someone that's very knowledgeable, I mean, they pay for themselves every single year, like
yeah.
10 times over, it seems like, right? Having the right attorneys that can
Attorneys.
draft documents for you, especially when we're talking about creative finance, like seller
Hmm.
finance, right? Or
Right.
subject to. Having the right attorneys. Attorneys, too, can also help you with asset protection and things
Hmm.
like that. Insurance. Well, we didn't even talk about insurance earlier, but
Yeah.
insurance brokers are super important. Those are people that we have on our team. And then title professionals. You
Title
know,
companies. Yeah.
we've used the same title company, I think, for 99% of transactions that we've done.
Yeah.
And we've done like double kind of the number of deals because remember we're buying properties, selling properties, refinancing properties, and also wholesaling some. So we've probably done, 30 or 40 transactions with the same title company. And
A
so
good title is gonna a good title company is gonna save you so many issues. They're gonna get there always are problems on these deals. Title companies are gonna catch them and a lot of times solve them before you even
yes,
know about
yeah,
them. A bad title company is gonna make your life miserable. Same thing with a bad lender. It's gonna make your life miserable.
yeah.
So we want to open this up for Q&A. We got a few minutes. If you have any questions, you can come off mute or you can text in the chat box. We'd love to hear some feedback. But we'll run through that list again. Wholesalers, agents, buy and hold investors, flippers, lenders, GPs and LPs, contractors, property managers, CPAs, attorneys, title companies, and coaches. Coaches have played an incredible role in my
Yeah.
business.
Coaches and mentors, we started in the very beginning hiring a coach and mentor. I mean, I had listened to podcasts, I've read books, I watched webinars, and I was getting a lot of information, but what I really needed were instructions, right? I needed a strategy, I needed a blueprint, I needed someone to hold my hand through the
Hmm.
process. And that's what a good coach and mentor can do for you.
Yeah.
So much so where, like I mentioned, we're still involved with this company. I'm now an accountability coach in that mentorship program. And over the past couple years, I would say since the beginning of 2023, 95% of the people who have started our program have gotten their first or second deal within the first
Boom.
6 months.
That's
So
good to hear. Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So our topic, building your power team, or for yourself, uh, maybe you're thinking, maybe buying and holding or flipping, and maybe that's not the role I want to play. Maybe I want to learn more about financing or being a, wholesaling, or maybe you want to get your real estate license. There's a lot of different ways in this industry that you can play a key role, that you can make money. We need each other. We need all these different players, and we need people that work hard, hustle, and are
Mhm.
smart, right? So, any final words, Alberto, before we wrap up the call?
No, I mean, you hit it all, Austin. That's what I love about real estate. It gives an opportunity. I think it is the best opportunity for, I mean, we're just everyday people,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not inventing something amazing, right? I'm just learning how to invest in real estate and build generational wealth. It is a slow process. It's not a get rich scheme, but with consistency and determination, you can build that portfolio that you can then hand off to generations, right? And I mean, we didn't come from money, so to have something for my kids and future generations and also have a positive impact on the community around you, and being able to change lives of people that come in contact with you. Real estate, it just does that, right? There's so many
Boom.
ways to do it. That's why I
100%.
love it.
100%. Well, we appreciate everyone being on the call. Don't forget, this is going to be replayed on YouTube. We'll send the notes out. Go by our YouTube channel, look up Austin from Houston. I'm on there. Subscribe, comment. Let us know what your biggest takeaways are. And what are you wanting to learn? What questions do you have? What topics do we need to cover? And yeah, feel free to reach out. My number is 281-729-6604. Stay connected. And Thursday, happy hour. We do this every third Thursday of every month. We're somewhere. So stay connected. Thanks, Albert.
Awesome. All right, man. Thanks, Austin. See ya.